Hello, I'm Father Jason Ingalls, the rector at Holy Spirit Episcopal Church in Waco, Texas, and this is the third video in our Elements of the Spiritual Life series, which is going through this book, The Elements of the Spiritual Life by F.P. Harton, an Anglican theologian in the early 20th century. We've talked already about some important distinctions, like the distinction between nature, supernature, and miracle. We also talked last week about what makes the Christian spiritual life different. And we said that what makes the Christian spiritual life unique is this indwelling of God in us, that this entire spiritual life has a response to God dwelling in us. And so our question today is, what does it mean that God dwells in us? Now, for Christians, we've heard this kind of language a lot. Things like, Jesus lives in my heart, or the Spirit is in me. But we tend to have a pretty vague conception of it. And honestly, it leads to a lot of questions. Like, if God lives in me, why can't I feel it all the time? Or if God lives in me, why do I still sin? Or honestly, the question we probably ask more often is, if God lives in that person, why is that person a jerk? What we mean when we say that God dwells in us is two things. It's a double gift. First is the personal indwelling of the Holy Spirit, and the second are the grace, the infused virtues and gifts which the Spirit brings when the Spirit comes to live in us. Now, a reminder that this in the Episcopal Church and in many of the traditional liturgical churches like Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, we talk about the Spirit coming to live in us when we are baptized. So we really believe that when an infant is baptized, that the Holy Spirit of God has come to live in them. But even that is kind of vague. Again, what does it mean to have the Holy Spirit living in us? Well, the first thing that we need to say, according to Harton, and be really clear about, is that this is not an abstract thing. The Holy Spirit is a person of the Holy Trinity, and therefore this is a personal indwelling. There is a being, God in God's self, who lives in us. And because the Spirit is a member of the Holy Trinity, and because the works of the Trinity cannot be separated out, by the power of the Holy Spirit, the Son dwells in us, and by the power of the Holy Spirit, the Father dwells in us. One God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, lives and dwells in us personally. We really can say that by the power of the Holy Spirit, Jesus lives in our hearts. That means that as we encounter this life of prayer, as we go more deeply in our life of prayer, as we remove the obstacles to our relationship with God, we are realizing a relationship that God has already won for us, a relationship that God has already established and is calling us into bit by bit, step by step, that we might know God more fully and be transformed into the image of Jesus, the Father's Son. So that's the first part of this double gift. The Holy Spirit comes to dwell in us, and therefore all of God dwells in us. But the second part of this gift are the graces, the gifts that the Holy Spirit brings. So the fruit of the divine indwelling is what we might call habitual or sanctifying grace. And that just means that the grace, the gift of the Holy Spirit being in us, means that there's an ever-flowing stream of grace in our souls. The water is always running, even if we can't feel it, even if we're not responding to it, even if we still sin, even if we can't feel it all the time, even if that person isn't living the way we think they should. Because where God is, grace is. The gifts of the Holy Spirit are present in every baptized Christian. Now, over the course of the next few videos, we're going to unpack these gifts, what we mean by grace, and then what we mean by this habitual grace, this ever-flowing stream of grace that is within us, but also what we call actual graces, the things that we feel and experience. So I invite you to pay attention to your life this week. Where do you feel the living God poking and prodding and pulling on your heart? I look forward to spending more time with you soon.